say most people know more about the show than we know about it.
I'm incredibly dumb. So
It's
yeah,
fine.
I have no idea what's going on our show ever.
I mean, we literally say it on every episode, so.
Wait, we're recording?
We're super professional about it.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean-American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
I'll just see you.
All right. What a silly intro. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Janchi Show. This is the Feasty Boys, if you will. KJ, Nathan, and Patrick. Patrick, why do I call us the Feasty Boys?
You call us the Feasty Boys because we feast on this show. And the reason we feast on this show is because the show is actually called the Janchi Show, which you know because you clicked on the episode to listen. And Janchi in Korean means to feast. And we also like to celebrate while we are feasting. So we celebrate each other's shared identities and heritages and cultures. One culture? I don't know. It's a whole bunch of stuff that we share. But we celebrate it sometimes with a guest, other times just by ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
thought
great
you were going to
pun.
say it had something to do with the Beastie Boys, but
Yeah, it's a great pun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I felt like that was already...
It's
known.
right there. Yeah.
I mean,
I
does
thought it was
everyone
known.
know who the Beastie Boys are? I don't know.
Raise your hands, listeners. We'll wait.
Yes, you know?
Oh, wait. Nope. Not everyone raised their hands, so that's what it is.
Now we don't know. An inaccurate count.
Go Google it.
Oh, what are we doing today, boys? I think we got a good old interview lined up today.
Good old interview.
We have a
you
good
can see
old
from the
interview.
title.
Yes. Oh, that's a good title. Good old
That
interview.
is a good title. With guest name. Because we've transitioned from coming up with title names to only putting the guest name. At least I have.
It's fine. Yeah. Whatever.
I saw
It's
you
fine.
started doing it, and I was like, I like that. I like the way that looks. Yeah. Nathan, why don't you talk about the guest that we had on for this episode?
SunAh, yes. We had a great interview. Actually, SunAh, it was somebody that we had met earlier before having her on the show, and we were fortunate to have her as a guest. You may have heard some of her voicemail. She left a little voicemail for us a while back. She's left a few questions for us before, and and has been very supportive. And so we were honored to have her on the show because of all the things that she has done, and her story is pretty amazing as well. She has definitely no spoilers alert, but it was a great intro, I guess. With
no spoilers alert.
with starting out our conversation with her, so it just pretty much paved the way for the rest of the interview.
Yeah, I thought it was a great interview. I think we've just been on a roll lately. I mean, ever since we started the show, I think we've just been on a roll. But
I mean, ever since we started,
since it became 2023 and we started to bring guests back, because we've just been in shambles in terms of scheduling. It's been really good, and I think this continues that strong run of really incredible, vulnerable episodes and conversations that we're having with people in the community. And yeah, SunAh has been an incredible supporter of the show. And yeah, it's just a big privilege to be able to have her on.
And I know we say it with all of our guests that we just wish we had more time with our interviews sometimes. But this is true again. We could have had a few more hours of discussion with her. So, but
we do say that about all of our guests.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
We say that. So,
all right. Without further ado, here is our conversation with SunAh Laybourn. Roll it.
Roll it.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Janchi Show. This is the interview portion, as we discussed briefly on the intro to this episode. Thank you for joining us again, and we're very excited to welcome our guest, SunAh Laybourn, to the show. SunAh, thank you for joining us today.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I am so excited to be here with you all. I'm a super big fan of the show, as you know, from the voice messages I leave y'all and the comments on the post. So I am so excited for us to have this chat.
We do appreciate the frequent engagement. That's the best part about community,
Support,
is engaging with each other.
Yeah.
And supporting with each other. Supporting with each other? Supporting each other.
Supporting each other. And I also have to,
Anyways.
for the listeners too, I also have to compliment you on your color coordination. Your headset matches your shirt too. So that's
It
awesome.
was totally unintentional, but yes, it's a whole vibe over here.
All we do are vibes. And speaking of vibes, as you well know, as we start all of our interviews, if you don't mind, we'd like to ask if you could share with us as much or as little of your story as you'd like.
It's so funny because I've listened to literally every single episode, and I
She really does know more about the show than we do.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know that I've listened to every single
Dang it.
episode. So
And so, like, this question, it seems so simple and straightforward, but something that I really appreciated about the show is that at one point you all were saying, like, everyone answers a question and it's that same canned answer that we've been used to giving our entire life because we've had to as a defense mechanism, as just, we've gotten used to it. And I can't remember which one of you all said, like, what would it be like if we told
Dibs.
our story, differently from our own perspective and not from like the perspective of our parents, not from the perspective of, the assumptions that people have about us. And so I was like, what is my story? Right. And, what I came to was something that I've been evolving into in the past couple years and really after I reclaimed my birth name. And that is, finally being at a space in my life where I feel like I'm just one person and not a whole lot of separate identities or roles that I'm trying to keep separate from the many different people in my life. And feeling free from shame, I think, is the best way that I can explain it. Free from shame of, being adopted, and the assumptions that come with that. Free from shame of being quote unquote unwanted. Free from the shame of, around race, around family, around belonging. And to just say, like, I have a right to be here and I'm worthy of being here and worthy of showing up exactly as I am, whatever that may be, and figuring out for myself, like, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in this world? And I will be 40 on Wednesday, and
ooh,
it's
happy birthday. What?
Yay.
Hooray.
Hooray!
thank you, yes, and
Wait, that's today.
yes,
Yes, that's today, technically, fellas, because
No.
this episode's playing on a Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, it might be the
Yes.
following Wednesday.
It'll be-
It's
It's
Oh,
belated.
it's this way.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I always get confused on the
Wow.
timeline.
It's
You
the
know,
what
I
is
get
timeline.
time?
confused
What
on
is
the
time?
Your
What is
birthday is the
Happy belated
15th.
birthday.
Yes.
My birthday is the 15th. Yes. The Wednesday that is the 15th of February.
All right,
But it has taken me really in the past few years to actually come into that, to say, like, I am who I am for me and not for what, my family thinks I should be, not for friends, society. And so I think my story is a story of coming into acceptance of myself, of who I am as Korean, as Korean American, as Asian American, coming into myself as a Asian American woman, right? And just freeing myself from the constraints and expectations of what it means to be adopted, of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be an Asian woman, Asian American woman in this world.
I really appreciate you sharing all that and telling your story a little bit in that way, resonating super hard, because I feel like I am on this similar path of having just recently reached acceptance and like you said, not being a bunch of different things, but accepting myself as that whole person. And I think that's huge. And I love that for you.
Yeah.
And so to kind of talk a little bit and walk a little bit through that journey, you talked about like getting away from the shame and moving beyond that. And I was wondering kind of when you first
became aware or noticed that. I saw in your guest form that you wrote that you grew up in a very black and white city. So I was just wondering kind of where that was and kind of to place you on the timeline in that way and kind of how you
Yeah.
first encountered that shame or that self-loathing or whatever that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really I feel like it started when I was very, very young, and not because of anything my parents said about, like, the adoption story our parents tell us, "We loved you so much," or your parents, "love you so much they couldn't take care of you," which actually my parents always said, like, they had trouble conceiving and that they decided to adopt. And I think it was already a pathway available to them because my dad was in the military. So it's pretty common. He was stationed in Japan, and went directly through a Korean agency. So not like a US agency. So I just think it was a process that was available. But they always explained that, the agency sent them a picture and they were like, well, if you don't like this one, we can send you another picture. And my parents were always like, as soon as we saw your picture, we knew you were our daughter, right? That type of thing, which is really beautiful if you don't think about it too much.
Yeah, if you don't
How many
think
times
about
did you swipe
past-
left
Yeah,
before
yeah.
you saw
Yeah,
my
I
picture?
know, right?
You're like, swipe left? What are you talking about? It's the 80s. What?
Oddly, that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. Is
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that app that they started to make somebody. Oh,
But so that was like the story. But I think we get so much messaging from society, from the movies we watch, even from our friends as we're children about what it means to be adopted, about what it means to not be with your biological family. So again, that idea that you're unlovable, that you're unwanted, that something is wrong with you, because why wouldn't your mother? It's always the mother, right? Why wouldn't your mother want you? It has to be with you, and all these ideas of like, mother's eternal love. And so if you're not with your biological mother, then again, like all this messaging. And so I think that was part of where that shame came into play. And you mentioned this word of self-loathing, and I think it really was like I know that as a young child, I had a lot of self-hatred.
Mhm.
I had a lot of hatred towards women because I felt like these stories are circulating that, well, women who give their children up for adoption, there's something wrong with them, right? They must be promiscuous, or they must not be taking care of, themselves, their family, etc. And then when I was 10 years old, my mom, who raised me, passed away. And so then I just really felt like all these mothers in my life keep leaving me, right? And feeling very abandoned, but also, you're a child, so you're trying to make sense of things in your little child brain. And again, it's like, oh, there must be something wrong with me.
Mm.
And I think that's really where those feelings first started, even before we kind of get to the race aspect and feeling very, out of place.
That there must be something wrong with me feeling is like that's a real thing. You said it out loud, and I'm just like, oh man, I feel that every time. Like I hear that and think about that. It's just like it brings me back to that childhood moment of being like, man, what's the problem? Why is this bad thing happening? And what did I do to cause this?
Mm-hmm.
And like really placing that burden and that blame on myself. When did you start to when did you recognize that you were kind of asking yourself that question? Like I know you said very young, like seeing
Mm-hmm.
those things, but then like when you or maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe like when did you realize that that was the wrong thing to be saying to yourself, I guess. And was
Yeah.
that, and like you said, that was maybe like you were feeling a little, or some of those feelings, like even pre-racialization. Did that
Mm-hmm.
come along on that particular journey as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, my dad actually put me in therapy after my mom passed. And I remember one of the assessments that the therapist gave me was it's kind of like a word association. So, just write down your first thought or feeling, with these different, words. And I noticed that for all of the words around like women or mothers, all of my like first responses were extremely negative. And
Mm.
so that's what first even brought it to my own awareness. Like,
Mm.
okay, like this is how you're kind of making sense of these things and internalizing. And it is a very weird place to be in, to have some hatred or very, very negative feelings towards women when you are a woman, right? Well, I was a
Sure.
girl at that time, but still same thing, right? And so that piece of it, I think, really stayed with me really for a while, even though I was aware of it. It's also like, how do I work through this on my own?
Sure.
And so while it was a seed that was planted, I don't think I was really able to come to terms with like what does it mean to be a woman, particularly as an Asian American woman, and the objectification and fetishization that comes along with that. And so still not being able to kind of like process and make sense of like who I am in my own body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that therapist was? I mean, they were mainly there to discuss the passing of your mother and just
Mhm.
to be there for you. Do you think that there was any? I mean, I guess benefit if they were more in like the adoption category of therapy as well? Do you think that would have helped more than like just a normal therapist? Because now that I know that those even exist, I didn't know that back in the day until probably in the last 2-3 years that I've known that is a specialty.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but also I will just like caveat this and say, like, I went to that therapist for maybe a couple sessions. And then, even as a child, I was like extremely precocious. So I was like, I need a new therapist because this one is not good enough.
I'm not
And
feeling this one.
I got
Show me another
another
picture.
right, exactly. Let me swipe. And so I got a new therapist, and the first thing that therapist said to me was, if you keep switching therapists, then maybe it's you and not them.
Oh,
Ma'am, first of all, I
Dang.
am a child.
Yeah, no kidding.
Also, it's my first time
Secondly,
switching. Like, come
right,
on now.
exactly.
Like,
And it's perfectly normal to switch. It is perfectly normal to try out a few different therapists, find who kind of clicks with you, who resonates with you, who you feel a good rapport with and a good safety with. And so, unsurprisingly, after that encounter, I was like, I'm done. Because
Yeah.
again, who wants someone to tell you it's you, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness, I'm already dealing with these it's me feelings. And now a person in a place of authority, right, is telling me that it's something wrong with me. And so I was like, you know what? I'm good.
I'm about to switch again.
Yeah. No,
What you got to say about
that's
that?
great advice to have to find a therapist that fits you, I think, and not
Mhm.
feel obligated to stay with just the first one or even just the most convenient one in your area or something.
So what's the pivot then for you coming out of that? So like you're carrying obviously a lot of loss, a lot of grief.
Mhm.
You've worked with somebody who was not helpful. And so then you worked with another person who was also probably not helpful. And you're like, okay, I'm going to move on from this. And so you kind of got to go and live
Move on
your
from
life.
this into
Yeah.
middle school?
I mean, that's what I'm saying though. Like you
yeah,
talked
you're
about
like into like the most awkward time of my life.
you're carrying a lot of this pain and emotion, and it's like you have to carry it because you can't articulate it. Like
Mhm.
we talk about it on the show
Yeah.
all the time. It's like I didn't have the language to articulate any of this,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going through a second loss, a second
Mhm.
loss of a mother, and it's like obviously that's a lot. So like I feel like in the middle school era, like in those school age eras, like you're kind of suppressing that. I don't want to assume, but
Yeah.
like, is it just a
Yeah.
compartmentalization and like here's how I survive and move forward with my life?
Absolutely. I think, first couple decades of my life was all about suppression.
Sure.
I absolutely that. So my mom passed, and then it was like I'm going into middle school, and it was a different school from like my elementary school, a much bigger school. So you're also just going through all the adolescent changes in general, trying to find yourself, your friend group. And I was not processing my emotions at all. I don't even want to say I wasn't processing them well. I wasn't processing them at all. I had in my mind that like if you cried, it was a sign of weakness. I didn't cry about my mom passing until I was in my 20s. And
Damn.
so when you think about like repression, suppression, all of just like that toxic energy, right? Suppressed energy just in me for like a decade. And I go into middle school, I'm like getting in trouble all the time. Like the vice principal has my dad's number on speed dial. He is there all the time. And it was just not good because I didn't have a way to express how I was feeling, like the pain that I was feeling, the confusion, the loneliness, and then just the regular adolescent feelings of, what is
Right.
life? And so it was just not a good time. and I think like that could have been a turning point to where, particularly if I would have stayed in that school for high school, that I would have been labeled like the bad kid. And we know what happens when folks are labeled the bad kid. No matter what you do, it's always going to be wrong. Teachers are
Mm.
always going to be looking at you. It's always going to be your fault. And so luckily I went to a different high school, and it was kind of like a fresh start for me, where I could start to say, okay, like, what do I want to make of this opportunity in front of me? What do I want to do differently? Because what I was doing in middle school, like, that's definitely not working.
So talk me through. I'm curious. I'm reading through your form and hearing what you're saying and these things, and I think partially because I just reread Interior Chinatown, so it's like kind of top of mind for me. But one of the things you talk about in your form that is really like that I'm particularly drawn to is growing up in the black and white binary. So in your form, you say you grew up generally in like Memphis, and so like having that like really stark black and white. Like for me, growing up in Dallas, I had like Mexicans or generally like Latin Americans to kind of like throw another shade of color into it. But I think like for you, for it being just kind of very black and white and being like, I know I'm not either of you, and I don't see myself, and all those kinds of things. Like, what was that point? One of the things the other thing that struck me was like you talked about feeling like you had moved through a lot of identities and become whole again. And so like it sounds like you just had a sense of like a fractured personality that you were like it was like so broken and so disparate. You're like, I don't know, I'm just gonna push it aside, and this is like who I was, whatever. But what was the navigation through middle school, through high school, and then into college of such a polarized kind of black and white thing, being an Asian in that space and adopted on top of that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I had a fractured personality.
Not like,
You
yeah,
know,
not like, but I mean, like for me, and we'll get into this later. This is another question, but like I have thought about myself in like very separate. Like I think of myself as Asian. I think of myself as like Asian American. I think of myself as whatever, and then like still moving through into like thinking of myself as like, well, this is just me, which is something that, like you had said, like I've gotten to this place now, but it wasn't always like that. But yeah, so but specifically though, yeah, kind of the black and white Asian binary, and that not being like part of that binary. What was that like?
Yeah. So I grew up in Memphis. So we moved there when I was, or moved here. I don't know why I said there. Moved here when I was about 4 years old, ready for school age. And so I've been here in Memphis for since then, with the exception of the time that I was in graduate school and was in the DC area for 6 years. And so it is, it's kind of like when people ask you, like, well, how is it to be adopted? And you're like, well, I don't know. Like, how is it to not be adopted? Like, the different versions of me have not met up on the timeline. So we haven't been able to talk and explain like what it's like. And it's kind of the same way, right? Like, what is it like to grow up in a city that no one looks like you? And it's hard to explain, right? That you have nothing to root yourself into a shared experience. And so it's kind of one of those things that I also feel similarly about adoption, where it's like you just learn to not ask because there is no answer to your question. Right? You just learn that this is your life, and there are no other realities or possibilities for you. And that's how it felt, because I could probably count maybe on two hands, if I'm being generous, that the number of Asian Americans I encountered throughout my entire childhood. And I could probably tell you all of the Asian American students that were in my K through 12 experience, right? Like I could tell you their names, because that's how few of us there were. So it's hard to have a group identity by yourself. It's hard
When you're
to
the only
right when
member
you're the
of the
only
group.
one. So like maybe this is my identity. I don't know. And so it was, because of course that you're not white. Like as much as your family might say, "Oh, you have so and so's eyes, skin, cheeks, smile, whatever," you're like, no. Like I get it. I get what you're trying to do, but also no.
Like I'm pretty sure that's
And
not how it works.
right. And it's like, so it's like, you're not white, and you're not black. So it's like, if those are the only two options, then so I just don't exist. And that's kind of how it felt. I will say that for my high school, when I went to high school, I went to my neighborhood school, which was a predominantly Black high school. And I think predominantly Black does not really explain the racial demographics of the school. It was a Black high school. And I could probably tell you the non-Black students that were in my high school. And I actually found a lot of acceptance and comfort with my Black peers because of the understanding that, like, we are not white. We are
Mm.
all here in this same school, in the same neighborhood, under these same conditions, right? And so I think, as far as like kind of entering into an awakening around racism, that was it for me because I had come from my middle school, which was just a few miles down the street, to my high school, and completely different resources, completely different experience. And the only thing that was different was the student body population. So it becomes very clear that this is about race, right? And so that was kind of my first, real life introduction into really feeling what racism is like.
Yeah. Well, and so like I think for me the point of like having like generally Mexican students, maybe some Asians, but same as you, like I could count them on five fingers, is like you
They're
could
gonna say 5 hands. I'm like, wait, what?
no. Five fingers. Like I had the benefit of knowing that there was like a shade, like that, like color and race was like kind of on a gradient, not just like black and white. Whereas like if you feel it very like binarily, I think it's harder to like to find yourself and emerge for that. When at least for me, I was always like, what does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean to be whatever? Like how do I fit in? Where's my place? All those kinds of things. And yeah, so like your questioning led you into further study and into further research. But where were you looking to in those early days to understand like what it meant to be an Asian American or an Asian woman? And then how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I wasn't looking anywhere. Where is there to look? So, and honestly, because first of all, like, what was Asian? What does that even mean? Like,
Mhm.
I know what adopted means, but what does Asian mean as a thing that you could go to the library? Because again, I'm 40, that you could go to the library and like find a book about, right? Like,
Yeah.
versus like I know what adopted means, and I can at least go to the library and say, "Hey, is there anything about adoption?"
Mhm.
So there wasn't really any, like, I didn't know. I knew, like the stereotypes that we saw on television. I knew that, but I didn't know. And because there wasn't a large Asian American community that was visible to me, um, it's like you just learn to not ask the question.
So when did you start to ask the question? Because I think like you, like I grew up in a town that had no Asian population. Like there it was invisible to me.
Mhm.
But I like so internalized it even when I went to college when there was quite a few Asian American people around me that was still and they were still invisible to me. Like and even
Yeah.
if they were visible to me, I actively recoiled from that
Mhm.
community. So and then I would not go on to ask the question until I was 30. So when and in your form, you talk about you've been on your journey for a while. So
Yeah.
when did you decide, oh, I'm gonna ask this question, or when did that question first pop into your head?
Yeah, so I went to undergrad at the University of Memphis, so stayed here. And at that time, again, like we didn't have like a large international student population. We didn't have a large Asian American student population. Um, you know, so it was kind of like the same, kind of like just more of the same. But I remember going to this, special lecture, and the woman was saying how it was a Black woman who was speaking, and she was saying how it's just so important for you to know your roots. And it just at that time, in that moment in my life when she said that, it just clicked for me like, yes, I need to know my roots. And the very next day, I'm walking through my dorm, and there's this big study abroad poster that says, like, discover Asia or imagine Asia. And so I went to the study abroad office and I was
Incredible.
like, I want to go to Korea. And the study abroad, officer was like, all right, here's the program, and you're going next semester. And I was like, all right, let's go. And so that was my first time back to Korea. So I
Wow.
was in undergrad. I think I was a sophomore, and went there for a spring semester abroad in Suwon at Aju University. And I I was like, all right, I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna have any expectations. I'm not gonna prepare for it. I'm just gonna show up.
Nice.
Like, oh, did we need more than one pair of clothes?
Right. I'm just gonna show up. And
I just
it's
brought a
so
fork.
yeah, it's so funny because, throughout my life, people had very little to say about Korea or to introduce me to Korean culture. But as soon as I said I'm going abroad for a semester, all of a sudden everybody's an expert on Korea and things I should be careful and things I should know. And Korea is like this. And I'm like, wow.
You're like, where were you 10 years ago?
Right. Like
Yeah.
y'all have been in my life for my entire life and there was nothing. And now all of a sudden you're experts on Korea. But I just really blocked out everything. I didn't allow myself to daydream about it. I didn't allow myself to, create little stories and fantasies in your brain because I just wanted to go and experience it, like just experience it fresh without any expectations. And so that's what I did.
How was that for was there a language like requirement?
No. They're just like,
She
go,
says she
go
prepared
forth.
0.
Were the classes in English or Korean?
So I took classes in English. So I
Okay.
took like an English literature class, which was kind of like a high school English, class. And then I took a Korean language class, of course. And I think I took one other course, but I can't remember what it was. I just remember the literature because I remember distinctly reading Canterbury Tales. And so I was like, this is very, like high school kind
Those are
of
wild.
level English
Yeah.
literature. But yeah, no language requirement, just there.
And then-
So, go ahead.
Sorry, follow up on that. Then while you were there studying English or studying Korean and in, amongst other maybe, international students, did you
Mhm.
meet any other Korean adoptees?
I did not meet any other Korean adoptees. There were a couple
Did
other
you meet
Korean
any other
Americans.
Koreans?
Okay.
Surprisingly, no Koreans. No.
So
Took them all out of the university.
that's actually a good lead in to what my question was going to be. And so, since you didn't meet any other Korean adoptees, was that even on your radar?
No.
Okay,
It was
because you
not.
talked about finding your roots, and it's like, okay, go to Korea. These are my roots. But
Yeah.
when does that journey start to intersect with the adoptee community?
Yeah, so I met a Korean adoptee, and from Memphis. We were both in this program together, and he was telling me how when he was growing up, he went to Korean culture camps and all this. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Wait, what?
Come on, roll that back one more time. You did
So
what?
you just said words that I didn't.
Wait, where do you said you lived in Memphis?
Right,
Like where
and I
I've
was
lived?
like,
You think I could have learned things?
right. I'm like, there's more of us. And I was like, oh my goodness. But like I mentioned, like my parents adopted me like straight from Korea, like
Right.
straight, them to orphanage without any intermediary. So there was no like support system. Like when we were in Japan where my dad was stationed, there were other adoptive families there on the military base. And so there was that while we were there. But when we moved, there wasn't anything. And so I wasn't connected to any, adoption related services or adoptee group. So it wouldn't be until college when I met another adoptee. And even still, it was just like, oh, I met another adoptee, or another Korean adoptee, I should say.
Right.
And it wasn't like, oh, there is some sort of organized community of Korean adoptees out there. And that wouldn't, really cross my radar until later.
Okay. So as we approach that later period when it's like, okay, now adoption or adoptee experience is on my radar. What were you doing? Like, how did that first trip to Korea, how did that study abroad trip propel you into whatever it is that you're doing? Because you do a lot of work, like a lot of scholarship work. And so how did that trip fuel any like desire or direction for you scholastically or what you wanted to do career wise?
No, it was more like, let's go be in Korea.
Was
for
it a good trip?
semester.
And then you came back, you're like, all right, I got that out of my system, and here we go.
Like I wanted to stay longer, but because I went in the spring, it was harder. Like if I would have went in the fall, then I probably would have been able to stay for the spring semester. But because I went in the spring, like there weren't really any programs in the summer that I could attend. So unfortunately, I was just there for the spring semester. But I have talked about like going to Korea for that first time or going back for that first time, and realizing that I had been holding my breath my whole life, and
Hmm.
just being able to exhale. And what I mean is like being able to exhale that no one is looking at me, right? Like I'm not on display. I'm completely invisible in the best way possible.
Right.
I don't have to be prepared that someone is going to ask me, so where are you from? No, where are you really from? Where are your parents from? I'm going to keep asking you until you tell me somewhere that's not America. Like, not having to be, prepared for people staring at me or sexualizing me, right? So just exhaling that, like, I can just be in this world without having to perform for people, without having to be, objectified. And I don't know, it was just something about seeing like a Korean bus driver, a Korean person on the street picking up trash, like these small things that really make a difference in seeing ourselves in the world. So back, KJ, to your question about like living in that black white binary, and that people who have the privilege of seeing people who look like them every day, all day, will probably never understand what it's like to go years of your life without seeing someone who looks like you and what that does to you. Again, I felt like, oh, I can breathe. I didn't even know that I had been holding my breath.
For the listener at home, I'm straight up bobbleheading right now because that's exactly the same feeling I had when I went to Korea. Like literally, almost. I talked about it as being you said you used the word perform. Like you weren't didn't have you realize, oh, I'm not performing, and that was like that was me. And but instead of holding my breath, my metaphor was like I took the mask off. Like I'd for all of my life just been wearing this mask, even after going on this journey. Like I still had the mask on in certain respects. When you go out and operate in public, I live in Indianapolis, which is still a predominantly white city, a predominantly white state. So when I go out there, it's like, and having grown up around whiteness, like you put the mask on. Essentially, you know how to interact with this community of people, and you do so because generally that's how you're supposed to. So you're supposed to act in public. And yeah, it's just like the feeling that the validation. I feel like I've been big on the word validation lately for some reason, but just the validation of being in not having to perform, to not have to put the mask on, to be able to freaking breathe and exhale and just be like, oh, this is what that's like. It's like an actual silence. Like I've been also battling tinnitus lately, and my ears just constant ringing in my ears. And like it was in Korea, it was just like I felt like all of that went away, like all my maladies I felt, or whatever the case might be, but specifically that. And it's like that's why I like getting up so early in the morning because that silence, like you don't get that very often. And I feel like that feeling was something I never felt before. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, that was just like took me right back there, and I just really
Korea healed your tendonitis. Is that what you're saying?
Not my tendonitis, my tinnitus. The ringing in the constant ringing in my tendonitis.
Oh yeah, his elbow is still gone.
Yeah, still
he just doesn't have an elbow anymore. He does still have a forearm, which is odd.
Well, he plays well, he was playing basketball, but he doesn't want to.
Oh, I still play
always
basketball.
kept getting it hurt.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really lovely. I think that's why, like, I don't know. When I'm around adoptees, I get kind of the same thing. Like, I don't have to perform. I don't have to, whatever. And I realized, like that idea of like, I was holding my breath and I didn't even know it. Was like, oh, that's what code switching is. That there's a level of like, well, this is who you naturally are. And when you're in this space, you don't have to put on any mask. You don't have to like hold your, be a certain way. You can just be who you are. And then all you have to worry about is just like people judging you for like normal things, not like the extra things that we get, like whatever that is. And so, yeah, oh man, I super get that. I feel that. So I want to circle back to something else that you said. You had said early that you were, one of the things that you were like working on and working through and feel like you've gotten to is like your sense of womanhood and Asian womanhood and those things. What was that journey like like I know that you said that your mom passed away and you didn't cry until like 10 years later, 10 plus years later, but what's that journey been like since then?
Mhm.
Kind of exploring that avenue of yourself.
Yeah, it's really a great feeling to be present in your body and to know that your body is for you and
Mm,
to know that you can move in this world and feel like you can take up space, but also that your body is for your pleasure too, as well, and not like something for someone else to experience and get some sort of like derive some not just pleasure but ownership over and control over. And so getting to that feeling and that acknowledgement, um, it's hard for me to really put a timeline
yeah.
on it, but I guess if I had to say it partly or maybe a really big part has to do with 5 years ago when I moved back to Memphis. I had seen all these women that I knew who were turning 40, and they looked amazing. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, when I turn 40, I want to look that good. Like, and so I was like, okay, I got a 5-year plan for like looking good when I
Oh,
turn
hell yeah.
40, like being
Okay.
in the best shape of my life. And so I found a trainer and started weightlifting. And, when you're lifting weights, you have to be in tune with your body. Like you
Mhm.
have to feel your body movement. You have to breathe in a certain way. You have to fill up your lungs in a certain way, right? You have to breathe in a certain way. And honestly, I would say that that is probably the start of that. Of even just having someone say, okay, take a deep breath. Okay, you feel where you're inhaling air. Okay, I don't want you to inhale your air there. I want you to inhale your air like in your belly, right? And like being in tune with like, wait a minute, what? There's different ways to breathe. Hold on. Where's the air
Am I
going? Help
breathing
me.
wrong the entire
But like being that in tune with your breathing, with your body, and then feeling that feeling of like, oh my gosh, did I just squat like 150 pounds? Like 200 pounds, like I just did, like my body just did that, and
Yeah.
feeling like in control of your body. And I think that is probably where that started, of being able to like reclaim my body for myself and not as an object, not as being sexualized, not as someone, wanting my body for them, right? And so that process of realizing like I have ownership over my body and I can take up space and I can also do like really strong things with my body as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, I love your posts on Instagram about your workouts and just your podcast too. That you talk about kind of, I guess, mind over matter in a way at
Mhm.
times, where you can do something, but yet you kind of psych yourself out sometimes, and you tell yourself that you can't do it. Is that also kind of why you do? I mean, why do you do the podcast? I guess number one, and why are you so motivational too? Is that, I know it's for yourself, but you're probably doing it for others too, because I think that's great. Is it?
I appreciate you
Yeah.
being non-assuming, Nathan,
Yeah.
but the way that
Sorry.
comes across is just
I
like,
know.
why do you do that
do
anyway?
you do the podcast?
Questions we
What
ask
is your
ourselves
motive?
about our
My-
show every day.
My questions are not as delicate, I guess, in
No, I
the
love
way that I
it.
phrase
That's a
them.
great question.
You know?
I love it. So the podcast is Purpose Over Vanity. And I started the podcast. That was my pandemic project. So everybody else, was like
Yes.
baking bread and like doing push-up challenges and like taking shots. And I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast. And it was purely selfish. It was purely in order to survive, because so much in the world was like, what is going on? Everything was disrupted. I'm a person who, I love the schedule. I love a Google Cal invite. I love, to write all the things down. Like, yes. And so in the pandemic, in, like phase one of the pandemic, when everything was like just completely just, we don't know what's going on, I was like, no, I need to know what's going on. Like something has to be knowable in my world in order for me to feel some sense of like stability, safety, security, a future, like a hope for a future. And so I started the podcast really as like self accountability of, sharing different goal getting strategies, mindset reframes, personal development tips And it was really just me talking to me, and other people got to hear it because I recorded it. But that was the impetus, because I was like, this proves to me that I believe there is a future to work towards. And told myself when I started, I was like, 6 months, just do 6 months, 6 months, and that's it. And you don't have to do it anymore. And so now we're like 2+ years in, and I'm still, on the podcast. But that was the original reason, simply so that I could have a reason to wake up in the morning and continue to exist and continue to work on projects, even though it seemed like, is there even like a future? Like, and does any of this matter? Is any of this even gonna like fit into the future that we might be
You're like,
creating? I
COVID
don't
wasn't in my
know.
5-year plan.
Exactly. I did not have that in the calendar.
I love that. I love that you did it for you, and that because that's something that we talked about when we started our podcast, is that we wanted to do it for us as well. We wanted to be able to go on our journeys, with ourselves and with other people listening, I guess. And
Yeah.
so that's great that was your motivation. So.
Yeah.
I love that, like, how you've talked about coming into yourself as a woman, and even like the podcast and things, because like I think for me, like, and I hear it echoed a lot in a lot of like Korean adoptees, a lot of people on our show, or even the three of us. One of those things that I feel, so like in my own journeys, I've had to like really come to grips with, in the same way that like I've come to grips with like what it means to be adopted and what it means to be Asian American, all that stuff, what it means to be like disabled, specifically for me in the way that I am disabled, like that I just have these limitations, and like I'm coming to a place now where I'm like, I'm okay with it, but I've not like fully come around to the place of like feeling myself and like feeling my body and like doing those things where I can look in the mirror and just be like, you know what, today I'm feeling myself. Maybe part of that's because I work from home, so I'm not like dressing up in a way to like like impress or anything, but I love that so much of like where you are now and some of the more recent things you've been doing is like, you know what, no, I've got a goal in mind, I've got a thing, and I'm actually being able to put into practice maybe some things that I've learned or things that I've worked through in order to like just to be that. And first and foremost, I'm showing up for me. And secondly, like other people get to benefit from the light that I have inside of me to give out to the people. So thanks for doing what you do. I think that that's really wonderful. So my other question that I've had since you started talking is, are there particular moments or memories where you're like, oh man, this wall that I had up about X identity or Y identity, whatever, that's the moment when it knocked down? And like, is there a moment when you felt like you had like moved through an identity into acceptance, and then moved through all of those things into like becoming who you are now?
Yeah. It was really when I reclaimed my birth name.
Mm,
So in 2018, I reclaimed my name, and it's kind of unbelievable, but with that decision, it's like I just let go of all of the limitations and boxes that other people had put around me that I had accepted and had been living within. And I said, like, this is me reclaiming who I am, who I've always been. And it's like all those disparate identities, whether it's like daughter or white family member or, like whatever it is, they all just merged into one, because
mm,
it was just a moment where I was like, I don't want to live all these, I guess, like separate lives. I don't want to hide, and it's not even, I don't want to live these separate lives. It's more like I don't want to hide parts of who I am from people,
right, exactly.
which was more what it was. Like I felt like I was always hiding in order to make other people comfortable, and I just decided, like, I don't care if you're comfortable. Like, oh well, you're gonna
Hell
learn
yeah.
to get uncomfortable. I don't care, and because for a lot of the majority of my life, it's like I had hidden parts of myself from people who, I love and who say they love me. And so what I mean is, like, for example, like, um, when I went to college when I was in undergrad, like I pledged a historically Black sorority, but that was something that I didn't really bring up to my white family. right? Like
Mm.
my research as a graduate student and now as a professor is all about race and racism. But that's also something that I didn't really say to my white family, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so like
We don't have to get into this
hiding
at Thanksgiving. That just eat the turkey. It's fine.
exactly. So just
School
like
is fine. Go away.
hiding parts of myself and my interests and things that really, were meaningful to me. And in the same way with some of my friends, like not really talking about adoption and not really talking about like the adoptee side of me. And particularly as I got more involved with adoptee groups, not really talking about that. So still keeping everything so like separate.
Mhm.
And I reclaimed my name. I reclaimed all of who I've ever been and all of who I will be. And I said, you know what? It's me. And for the people who love me, they will come alongside me. And the people who it's not to say they don't love me, but maybe it's a little uncomfortable for them, they will either they'll learn or they won't. And that's fine. And so I had just come into this understanding that I wanted to be all of me all the time. And so reclaiming my name was like that point of saying like I'm going to be all of me all the time. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not ashamed of any parts of who I am, and so I can be who I am all the time with everybody.
Yeah.
I freaking love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
amazing. Definitely resonant in the way that, I feel like I hit that point in May of last year. And part of that was like reclaiming or just even using like my full name, essentially, I guess, what I've been given as an adoptee, because I have two middle names, like I'm sure
Mhm.
many adoptees probably ended up with. The first, my name's Patrick Samuel Young Armstrong, Young coming from the Korean name that I was given, whether that was my birth name or the given name that I had at the foster home, whatever. But even just like that, like I used to be super embarrassed of the
Mm.
young part of my name, and like putting that, like even just in my Instagram, just putting that in part my Instagram name was big because,
Mhm.
like you said, I wasn't sharing that with my family. Even when I started all this stuff, like I was still hiding, and maybe like you said, maybe hiding is not the right word, but I was holding my breath in certain areas
Mhm.
when I am putting the mask on,
Yeah.
still, instead of leaning fully in. And so I think not only with the reclamation of your name, but kind of everything that you've shared with us today um, has reminded me of something that you wrote in your guest form, which was one of the questions is, what's the part of your story you're most passionate about? And and what you wrote was welcoming vulnerability and intimacy. And I think
Mm.
a lot of what you shared today, even though we haven't used those two specific words, resonate with that. Like when you were talking specifically about the weightlifting and like your journey through that and like the feelings
Mhm.
you were feeling, I was like, oh, you have to be one, vulnerable to get in touch with yourself and your body in that way. And two,
Mhm.
that's a really intimate act.
Mhm.
Reclaiming your birth name is super intimate. You have to get to a really vulnerable place to do that and then feel good about doing something like that. Feel and be able to lean into that and accept yourself as whole, as this one person who's made up
Mhm.
of all of these different identities that intersect in all of these different ways. And so, um, I have 100,000 more questions, but this is not going to be my last question in the interest of your time.
Okay.
Um, what advice would you? So, I think one of the things that I love about our show is that I think it's because we started at a place of like entering into the community and figuring out what
Mhm.
it means to be an adoptee, what it means to hear stories every week that are resonant or similar to your own.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what I love about the show. It's a good in for a lot of adoptees, whether you're
Yeah.
old, whether you're young, whether wherever you're at in the journey. I think it's a good place and a good way in. And so my question is, like, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe just starting out into this journey, who's searching for that vulnerability and that intimacy?
Mm.
What kind of wisdom or advice would you share with that person? Super. That's a super big
Yeah.
question. Super out there. I'm just wondering, kind of what would you impart?
Yeah, as you were talking, Patrick, I was thinking, because you said the word acceptance, and it made me, really think about the fact that, like, I had spent so much time wondering if, like, other people were accepting me that I hadn't considered if I was accepting me or not.
Yeah.
And I think that has made all the difference. Just like I'd spent so much time trying to avoid being abandoned by other people that I hadn't considered the ways that I was abandoning myself. right?
Mm.
By not having a voice, by not having, you know, being vulnerable, by not creating intimacy. And, you know, I think for folks who might be just starting out on that journey, you know, vulnerability really is the key to life. And this comes from a person who has actively avoided emotions and intimacy and relationships and commitment for the vast majority of my life. But I just came to this realization, you know, a few years ago that I was like, everything that I want, everything that we all deserve, you know, these big relationships, this big life, a full life is accessed only through vulnerability. And that really starts not as an act between us and someone else, but as an act within ourselves. And so having, you know, the courage to sit with our own feelings, to not know what they are and be okay with, I don't even know what I'm feeling, but I'm feeling something and I'm not going to shut it down. I'm not going to run away from it. I think is really the first key. And to knowing that however you feel is okay. Like no one gets to tell you how to feel about being adopted, about your adoption journey. No one gets to tell you how to feel or what you should do. Like you get to decide for yourself. And maybe, you know, how you feel today is going to be different than how you feel a couple years from now. And that's okay too. But to not run away from those feelings and to not suppress them. Because one thing I know is that suppressed feelings, they do come out. And they're much better when you just let them flow versus them, you know, erupting and disrupting your life at, you know, a very inopportune time.
Oh my God, that's amazing advice. Some of the best stuff that I think we've had shared on the show for our listeners.
Well, and I think it's so lovely too because we have on display like multiple levels of vulnerability. I think in the people present in the recording. So like SunAh, you've reclaimed your Korean name, and like that is an incredible vulnerability. I mean, like one of the reasons that I've personally have like thought about doing it and then not done that has been like, yeah, but then I have to get in like, well, wait, how do you say your name? And I have to deal with people, you know, like whatever. And that like, but that, like that, it puts you into like this state of like, I want to, you know, I want to live like this. I would love to hear people call me Juntae or whatever, but also I'm like, no, that's not whatever, you know, like all those kinds of things. And yet you've chosen to do it, which I think is a really vulnerable decision and a choice to make. And I think it's absolutely lovely. Patrick, you've talked about being like, yeah, just added my full middle name into Instagram, which is, I think in and of itself, it's its own thing. Like vulnerability takes practice,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that like being able to just as a listener of the show currently being recorded, like to experience like two forms of vulnerability, to be like, I was vulnerable in just putting my full given legal name, you know, on Instagram, or for me, it was like putting my Korean name on, you know, on the internet, or, you know, for Nathan switching from his photo profile on Instagram to just his personal profile on Instagram. Yes. You can find him like just little steps of
Noah.
It used to be find me at Noah
Noah
photo. Yeah. Just little steps and little journeys in those things.
He was like, what?
It can really pay dividends down the road. Like if you give your vulnerability to someone, they will often, I mean, if they're like a decent person, they will often give vulnerability back, you know, and in that way we make the world a better place.
Absolutely. So I love what you said about like vulnerability is a practice, because it absolutely is. You know, I just made this declaration over my life in 2019. Vulnerability is my superpower. It was the biggest lie ever. Like it was not my superpower, but that was what I wanted it to become.
5-year plan.
Exactly. And now I'm like, look at me. Recently someone told me that they thought I was a very like feelings forward person. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like no one in my life would have ever said that about me. So I'm like, it's working.
Was that like a made it moment where
yeah,
you're like,
it really was. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the best compliment of my life. Like, you know, and it's so funny because like people get to meet us at different points in our journey and they don't have any idea of who we used to be. And they get to just experience us as this person that we are now. And I think that's really beautiful. I'll just say like, you know, make that declaration over your life. Like vulnerability is my superpower. And you will find so many opportunities to be vulnerable. And vulnerability can be a very small act. It can be asking for help, right? It can be accepting help.
Mm.
It can be very small. It doesn't have to be you, like crying on the internet, as I like to say, like pouring all your feelings out. But it can be something small, like accepting help, asking for help, telling somebody, it really hurt my feelings when, blah, 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 right? It can be those small things and those moments where you're like, should I say this? Should I do this? And you're starting to get nervous. Those are those moments of vulnerability where you get the opportunity to be like, yes, I'm going to show up as the self that I want to be and do that. And I'll just say, one thing about the name change, it was so beautiful because as soon as I mentioned that I was thinking about changing my name, all of my friends immediately like changed my name in their phone, started calling me
Amazing.
by
Wow.
my Korean name. And so, like let people show up for you, like let
Mhm.
people show you that they love you, they care about you, they respect you because they do. And, it is funny because, like my name has many pronunciations. So like a lot of people call me SunAh, which is like all my like non-adoptee friends call me SunAh. And that's how I introduce myself to them. So it's not like they're mispronouncing
Sure.
it. And, like the adoptees call me SunAh. And, you know, none of those are the actual pronunciation of my name.
Is it
Uh,
SunAh?
It's actually SunAh.
SunAh?
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 Yeah.
SunAh.
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 Mhm.
All right, you heard it here first. Adoptee community exclusively.
But it's just funny, like to hear a Korean person say it in Korean is just so different and special.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
so I was
for sure.
recently having the conversation with my friend that I was like, it's actually not SunAh and it's actually not even SunAh. And they were like, why haven't you told anybody? And I was like, there's just something special about hearing a Korean person say it, And so I think we do get to keep things, we do get to be vulnerable and we do get to do things for us. And then we also get to keep certain things sacred just for us too.
Yeah.
I love that. When I communicate with my biological family back in Korea, I changed my name on the little app that I use to my Korean name, and I just feel so much better that they can call me that than feeling forced when they call me Nathan instead.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I just thought that was so much more authentic that they call me by the name that that our parents gave me. So I understand how you feel, just different when somebody calls you an actual Korean person calls you by the actual pronunciation. So yeah,
Mhm.
love that. But
Well, we're actual Koreans too,
You
Nathan.
all
Koreans
are
too. I
actual
know.
Korean
See,
people.
that was a little imposter syndrome there.
Hey, it's all good. Imposter syndrome. We all be battling it. Yeah. I don't know. I don't.
This
I,
is
that's what
yeah.
we would have
I
a
mean,
triple interview if we
yeah.
if we
We already
continue.
talked about we need you back, and yeah. I mean, this
Yeah, because
is
we didn't even talk
already
about
amazing.
your book or the stuff that you've been
Yeah.
working on. We
Or
was
the
literally just
community
talking about
and
you.
con. And,
Oh my God.
that's
Can
how
we-
I
can
met you.
Can you plug your
So-
book though? Because I just saw that. I was like, wait, I want to talk about that real quick.
So I have a book. It won't be out until this winter. So it'll be a minute. But the book title is Out of Place: The Lives of Korean Adoptee Immigrants. And it is a book about Korean adoptees, about belonging, about race, family, and citizenship, and also and how adoptees are, out of place in some of these big categories of belonging, but also how adoptees create community amongst themselves and create their own space.
Love it.
Yeah,
I can't wait to read it.
it's gonna be great.
you.
Very, very
Also,
excited.
do you center, so just by the title, do you center like the idea of Korean adoptees as, assuming they're transnational, like as immigrants?
Yes.
That's cool. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. I'm sure other people have thought about it. Obviously, you have thought about it. But I'm just like, man, I want to read something from that point of view because I don't know that that's like, and maybe it's just because we haven't had ways to amplify our own voices. But I'm like, that's got to be like out there, and that's a perspective that I really need to hear. So I can't wait to hear and to be able to read that because
Thank you.
yeah, I think that's a really great
Well,
take on things, and I want to hear more about it.
it sounds like as we get closer to the wintertime, we're gonna need to have you back on the show.
Yep.
Yes, I would love
So
to
go ahead
come
and fill out a
back.
form in June, and then we'll have you back
Make sure you
now,
fill out the form
and in
by March
8
at the
months,
latest.
we should be ready.
Well, SunAh,
Sana.
Am I saying it correctly?
You know, I'm gonna
Sana?
write it down, and
Sana.
I was
you
like,
can read it.
can you write it in Korean? Because then
I
I can actually,
can,
I can.
yes.
Oh, I cannot.
I will do that.
I will not be any closer to being able to pronounce it from the Hangul, unfortunately.
Is it that? Oh wait, I spelled it right. I'm a dummy.
But
That's
where
second
can
one.
people find you on the internet?
Oh yeah, stop
On-
talking. I was
Oh
like
yes,
waiting for
on
the.
the internet, you can find me at SunAh Marie only, SUNAH Marie only on Instagram. On Instagram, yes, that is where I'm most active. I'm like, I'm on Twitter, but wait, I think my Twitter name is something else. Or you can find me, like, you can also go to my website, SunAh Laybourn, SunAhMLaybourn.com. It'll be in the show notes. Those are a lot of letters to remember. But yes, on Instagram, if you want to follow my weightlifting journey and get motivational messages in the Instagram stories and just connect with me.
Perfect. Well, as she said, it'll be in the show notes. She gets it. She's a podcaster. She knows where that stuff goes.
Yep.
Well, really, really appreciate having you or giving us your time and being so vulnerable and open with us about your story, and really excited about the work you have coming out. And hopefully we'll have you back here in a few months, maybe sooner, maybe not. I don't know. Nathan does the scheduling, so don't ask me.
Nathan does his
Don't put it on me.
Nathan, figure it out.
We'll put it on Nathan. But for right now, I think we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with a food or drink, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. Food time. Yeah, I know you thought I was gonna go foodie, didn't you?
I never know. I never know.
Yeah.
Never, ever know.
Today we are eating something hoppy. I don't know, because that's what
What?
it says on the top of it. It says
That guy looks
HAPI, hoppy.
Happy.
I don't know. I don't know if
I
that means
definitely
happy.
immediately
I don't know if it's.
I'm assuming that's a brand name.
Yeah, I think it's the brand. I don't have
Manufacturer.
anything else on my packaging because I sent KJ the box, I think, or Patrick
Nope,
the box.
Patrick's got it.
Patrick's
This
got
is
the box,
easy open.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is pleasing to open.
But it
Oh,
is
wait,
a
there's-
frosted cookie stick with popping candy. So yeah, we're moving into the very unhealthy snacks now. I don't know.
I don't know
All right.
that any
Well,
of our
on the
snacks have been
box, not
particularly
a
healthy.
single bit of Hangul. The only thing that would even denote Korea, that this is a Korean product, is it says product of Korea
Yeah,
right
so
there.
I checked on
So-
that one.
We're going to have to do a little bit of internet sleuthing to get any more information out of this box.
Whoa! My mouth feels like it's on a roller coaster.
Is it popping?
Whoa.
This is wild.
Oh goodness.
Okay, you both giggling like school children. I can hear it. That's kind of making me scared to put it in my mouth.
Wow, it is just like that
I love
pop
it.
candy. Yeah, but on a chocolate stick. Goodness, I like
It
hear it
does
in the
make
back
you
of my
laugh.
head. Wow.
I know my wife needs to have a piece of this.
I know, but I'm gonna.
All right,
get
I'll
up in the
save her
middle of
this one
recording and
piece.
Give it to her right now.
That's
I
wild.
wish there was more of these.
Did you eat
Instead of
Pop
the
Rocks
one.
as a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so did I. I used to try like to find the big one, and then just wait and just kind of pop it. And I was always worried it was gonna hurt because every once in a while, would explode in your mouth and
It's
hit
like
the
a
top
hard
of your
candy.
gums.
Yeah.
But man, this
Very
is
fun
wild.
treat.
I have not had this in a long time. Like
You
the
know I
fact
love
that
it because I love chocolate.
It's true, and it's got that and the popping. So it's like
Making it
both.
hard to not talk so loud because all I can hear is the popping
right?
in my ears.
That's what, it's like the back of your ears, though, right? It's like a really
Yeah, it,
weird
like,
location where you're hearing
Immediately gets stuck right at the
Mhm.
back. Yeah.
What?
it. Wow, that's interesting. Memories of
I love
childhood
it so
candy.
much.
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm upset that I only have one.
Mhm.
So there was only 3 in a box,
Oh wow.
luckily. So
Maybe.
I
Luckily,
said-
he says.
that
Luckily.
luckily there's 3 of us. So, but yeah, I'd never seen this at the store before. And again, I just would never think of combining pop candy with chocolate sticks. So it's like really is like a Pop Rocks met Peppero and made a candy.
Pop
Mhm.
rocks pepero.
All right.
There's a
Popping in
jingle.
my mouth. Let's go.
Whatever the like biscuity cookie thing is, because it's not like a pretzel.
No, it's like a
it's
Dunkaroo
delicious.
stick.
It's
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
it's very, very good. The chocolate is solid. The Pop Rocks are
Popping.
joyous, like literally joyous, like worthy of like a hooray.
Nice lead in. Yes, I don't really have much to say other than, yeah, I have
Other
not
than
yet.
they're freaking amazing.
I have not given my kids Pop Rocks yet, but I'm curious how they will feel about that someday.
Are you holding off for the sugar of it? And you're
Yeah,
like, you know what?
the
You
more
need to eat.
candy we introduce them to, the more candy they want.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope.
That's how it goes. Trust
So,
me. I know.
Yeah, we're good right now with like a few things, but yeah, certain candies that I know that they're probably gonna like. We're not gonna like, for example, Valentine's Day. You give candy and little snacks in class. They got like all these fun dips. Do you remember those?
Yep.
It's
The
just essentially
white stick
sugar.
with the sugar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just sugar on a stick, and I'm like, no, they're not getting that. let's wait for a little while on that. But like they've never had Kool-Aid, they still have never had soda. But someday, I mean, slowly.
Oof, never had soda.
Yeah, I know.
Like
That's probably good.
Kool-Aid, take it or
Keep
leave
'em
it.
away
Never
from
had
it.
soda. That one's
I
big.
mean, unless you consider lemonade soda, which I kind of
I do not.
Yeah, because it comes out of the soda fountain machine. But yeah, that's the most
Oh,
we've
I
given
see.
them.
I see. All right. This is fun. That was soda talk with KJ and Nathan.
Soda
So this
time.
Soda
Hoppy-
pop. We should do a
Hoppy
survey.
Poppy
Who says
stick.
soda and who says pop? Speaking of
How many
yeah.
pops? How many pops out of 5?
I'm
you
giving it
this?
6 out of 5
6 out of 5.
Mm.
A 1 1/5.
because the level of joy that I experienced is like, I mean, it's like my senses when we're on a roller coaster. Like, I would give anything a high rating just for the joy of it. Like, I don't know that I can. There aren't a lot of foods where I'm just like put into that moment, but this one really did it for me. So 6 out of 5. It was fun. I mean, if you don't like Pop Rocks, then you're probably not going to enjoy it. But it's a good tasting thing. This, like I said,
Yeah.
the sticky thing tastes good. The chocolate's good, but the Pop Rocks are just like so much fun. I literally was like, if I don't give this to Sarah, I'm gonna eat the whole thing, and I have to do this right now. But like, so fun. And I was like, everyone just deserves a good laugh when they're eating. I don't know. It was just it was great. So 6 out
For
of
the
5.
listener, huge a smile on KJ's face as he's
Yeah.
talking about this.
Mhm.
If you couldn't hear it, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. I'm not, I can't. I don't have much else to say other than whatever everything KJ said is very true. I like the nostalgic part of it, but I also like that it's different because it's on a chocolate stick. So I definitely would eat again for sure.
It sounded like you were going to try and justify why you weren't going to give it
Why
6.
you were gonna
but
break
you
the
were
scale.
going to
I
give
know.
it 5.
I stay
don't
within the
think you have to do
lines
that.
of the ratings. Sorry.
We know who
Yeah.
the rule follower is of the
It was the
podcast.
square. It was square. I'm square.
Just because of that, I'm also giving it a 6 out of 5. This is a very fun snack. I really enjoyed it. I
Take
love
that.
chocolate. I love chocolate. I've like it so much that I've actually saved a significant portion of it for my wife, so she can also try it.
Aw.
Where normally I would have already devoured the
Yeah.
entire
True.
snack.
One bite.
The pops set it off. Take it to another level of snack. I think if it
Yeah.
was just the same thing, no pop,
if
it would be great.
If there were no
but-
pops, I would give it like a 3. But
No
like, the
pop, it would
pops-
be good.
Yeah.
But okay, but the pops do take it to the next level, which is what got me to 6, not necessarily from 3 to 6. But anyways, that's the food portion. Go ahead and get your. Will we link these in the show notes? I'm doing the show notes. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll see
You
if I
should.
can find them.
Happy. HAPI.
Yeah, but if you don't happen to look at the show notes for some reason and you can't remember where it is that you want to try and find this snack, you can go find that on our website, janchishow.com. You can also go there to see the stuff we have in our merch store, find out different ways to support us. If you don't want to go to our website, but you want to follow us in other places, you can do that at Janchi Show and all of the other internet happenings. You can go join us on Facebook at the Janchi Show After Party, our fun Facebook group. And you can also send us an email to janchishow@justlikemedia.com. Send us an email. We love to hear your comments and rave reviews of all of us and our show. It feels so good. So good. You can also leave
It's just
us
nice to feel like we're not shouting into the void. And the only way we
Yes.
know that is if you interact with us. So
if you interact with us, and if you also want to shout into our void, you can do that at 972-677-8867. That you can leave us a voicemail in our void. Again, that's 972-677-8867. If you want to find me, you can do that at Patrick in the World, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
Love screaming into Patrick's void.
Please scream away.
I'm at KJ Relke on all the places, and KJ Relke on LinkedIn. I'm the Asian one.
Also,
I feel like if you're gonna steal my thing, then I should steal what used
That's
to be
true.
yours.
That is true.
Touche.
So
Touche.
I am N Nowak on Instagram and Nathan Nowak on Facebook. And I did, speaking of the Facebook group, I did put in an interactive poll in there because I was curious to see what you guys like to see about our snacks and stuff, and so what we eat. So leave us
Is that
some
poll still
feedback.
open?
Yeah, I'm sure it's still open.
I don't think polls
He has
close
no
on
idea. He put the
Facebook.
poll out.
I have
and he
no
did not
clue
check it.
how many people have answered it. There could have been 0 answers to my knowledge at this moment, but I will check right after
Well,
this.
Go on there on the Facebook group and answer Nathan's poll. Let us know about the snack portion. Fellas, we did it. We've done it once again. SunAh, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story with us.
Yes,
And
an
for joining us.
incredible
Can't
interview.
wait to have you back to talk more about your other work that you do, the book you got coming out, and all of that fun stuff. So I guess until next week, we'll see you later, Janchi.
I've become Kermit. Hey everyone. You like Pop
That's
Rocks?
good.
Thanks.
That was a good Kermit. All right, I'm going to go give this snack to my wife real quick.
Ow,
my legs.